I think I didn't do anything wrong, just made one reckless decision to prove a point. I only wanted my friends to stop calling me boring. But now there's a thick envelope on my kitchen table with my name on it, and my husband's lawyer's letterhead staring back at me. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. I'm not saying I did anything wrong, really. I just wanted a little attention, something harmless to make my friends stop calling me boring. That's how all this started. The stupid night with Luka Hayes, our town's so-called Rockstar. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. We didn't even do what everyone thinks we did. I just wanted them to see me with someone exciting for once. Someone people actually talk about. But now there's an envelope sitting on my kitchen table with my name typed across it and my husband's lawyer's letterhead at the top. Nathan hasn't called, hasn't texted, hasn't even come home since the story blew up online. My phone's full of messages, half gossip, half pity, and I can't tell which makes me feel worse. Everyone's acting like I ruined his life, like I'm some kind of monster, but they don't understand what it's like being invisible in your own marriage. Nathan never looked at me the way he used to. So, I made sure someone else did. That's all. I thought it would make him realize what he had. Instead, he's the one who walked away, and apparently, he's not coming back without a fight. The envelope had been sitting there since morning, a thick, pale rectangle right in the center of the kitchen table, catching every bit of light like it wanted to be noticed. I'd been avoiding it for hours, walking around it, pretending I had more important things to do. Washing dishes that were already clean, refilling the coffee cup I hadn't touched. But the truth was, I couldn't stop looking at it. My name, Mrs. Ophelia Dorne, printed in neat official letters, just above the name of a law firm I'd never heard of. I told myself it had to be some mistake. Nathan wasn't the type to do something dramatic. I remember thinking, he'll come home once he cools off. That was always how we worked. He got quiet, I waited, and then eventually he'd forgive me without saying it out loud. Except this time, the silence felt heavier, like a door had closed somewhere I couldn't find. It started 3 nights ago, the night of Maya's birthday party. Everyone had been drinking and laughing, the kind of cozy noise that makes you feel young again, even when you're past 30 and halfway through a mortgage. The bar we went to wasn't much, just the stage light, a place that smelled like spilled beer and fading dreams. But Luka Hayes was playing there, our little town's rock star. His songs were all over local radio lately, and girls my age still talked about him like he was 20. I didn't plan to stay after everyone else left. That part just happened. Maya had dared me to talk to him earlier in the night. "You're married, not dead," she'd said, laughing. And I'd laughed too, pretending it was all a joke. Nathan wasn't there, of course. He had one of his late-night school events, some music showcase for his students. I told him I'd probably just grab dinner with the girls. I didn't mention the bar, or the band, or Luka. It wasn't lying. Not really. More like protecting him from details he didn't need. When Luka came over after his set, still sweaty from the stage lights, the crowd around us shifted. He knew Maya, hugged her first, then turned to me. "You're Ophelia, right? You work at Dr. Kemp's office," he said. I nodded, and he smiled like he already knew what that meant, that I was one of those women who smiled back too easily. 1 drink became 2, and then 3. The rest of the girls left, but I stayed. I told myself I was just being friendly, supporting local music. Luka was funny in that lazy, charming way men are when they don't have to try. He asked about my husband once, and I laughed too loudly. "Nathan's a teacher," I said. "He's probably asleep by now." I don't remember exactly how it started, but I do remember thinking how nice it felt to be seen again, even if it was for the wrong reasons. When he offered to walk me home, I said yes. I wasn't drunk, not really, just tipsy enough to think everything was harmless. We talked for a while on the porch. He leaned in once, but I laughed and said something like, "You wish." Then I went inside and shut the door, my heart racing like I'd done something brave instead of stupid. The next morning, there was a photo. Someone had taken a picture of me and Luka at the bar, me smiling too hard, his arm around me. It was posted on his band's page, and people were tagging names in the comments. By noon, half of my friends had seen it. By evening, so had Nathan. He didn't yell. He didn't even text right away. Just silence, that awful patient silence that made me feel like I was the only one panicking. I called him twice. No answer. I sent a message. "We need to talk." He didn't reply. That's when the panic turned to anger. He was overreacting. That's what I told Maya when she came over the next day. She perched on my sofa, scrolling through the comments on Luka's post. "You should probably ask him to take this down," she said softly. I rolled my eyes. "It's just a photo, Maya. He's acting like I ran off to Vegas." She didn't answer. She just looked at me in that quiet way she does when she doesn't want to argue, but doesn't agree either. Nathan's mother, Claire, called that evening. I didn't pick up at first, but she left a voicemail. Her voice was calm, too calm. "Ophelia, I think you know what this is about. Nathan's with me for a few days. I don't think it's wise to contact him right now." I replayed that message 3 times. Each time it stung more. I told myself it was temporary. He'd come back once he realized how ridiculous this all was. I mean, we'd had rough patches before. I'd said things I didn't mean, done things I shouldn't have, but marriage is supposed to survive mistakes, right? When I finally opened the envelope, my hands were shaking. Inside was a stack of papers clipped neatly together, petition for separation. My name printed over and over again, in sentences that made me sound like a criminal. Irreconcilable differences. Infidelity. Custody consideration. Words that felt like strangers pointing fingers. At the bottom, Nathan's signature, neat, steady, confident. I sank into the chair and stared at it until the letters blurred. Part of me wanted to laugh, to tear the papers up and send him a video saying, "Really? You think this is how adults handle things?" But something stopped me. Maybe it was the tone of his handwriting, if that makes sense. It looked calm, final. Daniel came into the kitchen then, rubbing his eyes. "Mum, are you crying?" he asked. I wiped my face quickly. "Of course not, honey. Mummy's just tired." He nodded, sleepy and trusting, and padded back down the hall. The moment he was gone, I slammed the papers down. "This is insane," I said out loud, though no one was there to hear it. He can't just leave like this. But he could, and apparently he already had. The phone buzzed again. Maya, probably checking if I'd done something stupid yet. I ignored it. I stared at the envelope, at my name printed so neatly it almost looked fake, and I thought about how unfair it all was. I'd been the one holding things together for years while Nathan drifted through his quiet little routines. I made our lives interesting. I made us visible. And now everyone was looking, but for all the wrong reasons. I told myself I wasn't going to cry again. I wasn't going to let him win by looking broken. I was going to fix this somehow. Maybe call Luka, get him to make a statement, say it was all innocent. People loved Luka. They'd believe him. Then Nathan would see how overblown it all was, and he'd have to admit he'd made a mistake. I started typing a message to Luka, but halfway through I stopped. What if he didn't answer? Worse, what if he did? What if he said something careless, something that made it worse? The clock on the wall ticked too loudly. The kitchen felt too big. The envelope sat there, open now, its contents spread across the table like evidence from a crime scene. I told myself again that I didn't do anything wrong. I just wanted to feel alive. And yet, as the sun went down and the house got darker, I kept thinking about Nathan's face the last time I saw him. He hadn't looked angry. He'd looked tired, like he'd already made up his mind about something. That scared me more than if he'd shouted, because if Nathan was finally tired of me, there might not be anything left to fix. Still, I told myself I'd find a way. I always did. When I looked back at the papers one last time, I noticed a single handwritten note tucked inside. Just one line in Nathan's careful handwriting. You wanted everyone to see you. Now they will. My throat went dry. For the first time, I realized maybe this wasn't just a fight. Maybe this was the beginning of something I couldn't charm or talk my way out of. But even then, even with those words staring up at me, I still couldn't bring myself to admit it was my fault. The night at the stage light had felt like a movie when it happened. Blurry lights, cheap perfume, music vibrating through my ribs like a heartbeat I hadn't felt in years. Now, thinking back on it, it just felt stupid. But at the time, it was perfect. I remember standing near the stage with Maya and a few of our friends, trying to shout over the noise, pretending not to care that Nathan wasn't there. He'd said he couldn't make it, that he had early rehearsals with his students the next day. That was always his excuse, some lesson, some project, some responsibility. I'd smiled at him that afternoon and said, "Of course, honey, go inspire the youth." Then I'd rolled my eyes the second he turned around. Maya was already tipsy when Luka walked out on stage. She squealed and grabbed my hand, yelling, "Look at him. Still hot, right?" I laughed and nodded, even though I hadn't really noticed Luka before that night. He was one of those small-town celebrities, played the summer festivals, opened for a few big names once, posted moody selfies with guitars. Everyone loved to talk about him like he was almost famous. I didn't mean to stare. He just had that thing, confidence that looked like carelessness. He spotted us in the crowd during his second song and winked. Maya shrieked again, but the wink wasn't for her. I told myself it didn't matter, but something in me liked it. After the set, Maya dragged me toward the bar, still laughing. She said something like, "You should talk to him. You'd make Nathan so jealous." I laughed too, because that was our thing, joking about jealousy, pretending we were still 20 and wild. "Please," I said, "I'm married, remember?" But even as I said it, I checked my phone. No message from Nathan. Not even a good night. When Luka came over, it felt scripted. He leaned against the counter, said he'd seen me singing along, asked if I worked at that clinic by the main road. I joked that I was the one who booked the boring appointments, while he played guitar and broke hearts. He laughed, told me I didn't seem boring at all. That line, so simple, felt like oxygen after months of breathing stale air. I told myself it was harmless. That's what I kept saying in my head. It's harmless. By the time Maya announced she was leaving, I'd already ordered another drink. Luka asked if I wanted to hear some of the songs he was working on. I said sure. Maybe I should have said no, but I didn't want the night to end yet. He took out his phone, played a voice recording, leaned closer so I could hear it over the noise. His shoulder brushed mine. I didn't move away. He said something about how the song was about a woman who stays too long in the wrong story. I laughed, said, "That sounds like me." He smiled like he understood, like he could see all the invisible disappointments I never said out loud. We talked about music, about the town, about people we both knew. I said things I shouldn't have, little digs about Nathan. I told Luka how he used to be passionate about teaching but had become boring lately, how he didn't get me anymore. Luka just nodded, eyes soft like he was really listening. Nobody listened to me like that anymore. When he asked if I wanted to see the backstage area, I hesitated for maybe 2 seconds. Then I followed. It wasn't much, just a small room with mismatched chairs and old posters. We sat there talking until the bartender started turning off lights. When he leaned closer, I didn't stop him right away. His breath smelled like whiskey and smoke. The kiss was quick, messy, and my first thought afterward wasn't guilt. It was panic that someone might have seen. I pulled away, laughed it off, said I should go. He smiled and said, "You know where to find me." On the walk home, I felt powerful, desired. I told myself nothing really happened, just a kiss. Nathan didn't have to know, but the next day, the picture appeared. Someone had taken it during Luka's set, me standing near the stage, looking up at him, smiling like I was in love. He'd shared it on his page with a caption that said, "Good crowd tonight, especially the front row." And of course, I was the front row. The comments came fast. People tagging names, making jokes. "Isn't that Mrs. Dorne? Nathan's wife? Didn't she marry that teacher?" Maya called me right away, half laughing, half panicking. "You need to tell him before someone else does." I said, "Tell him what? That I went to a show?" She sighed. "Ophelia, the picture looks bad." "It's a picture," I snapped. "I'm not going to feed his ego by apologizing for being seen in public." That afternoon, Nathan came home early. I could tell right away he'd seen it. He set his keys down, looked at me, then said in that careful voice he uses when he's trying not to lose his temper, "Did you have fun last night?" I laughed a little too loudly. "We were celebrating Maya's birthday. You knew that." He nodded once. "Right, at a bar, with Luka Hayes." I said, "It's a small town, Nathan. He was performing. Don't be ridiculous." He just stared at me for a long moment, then walked to the bedroom. I heard the sound of drawers opening, closing. When he came back out, he had a small duffel bag. I tried to keep it light. "You're leaving because I went to a concert." He said, "No, I'm leaving because I've been trying to convince myself that you still want this life, and I think I finally have my answer." I called after him as he walked out. "You're being dramatic, Nathan. Everyone was there. Ask Maya." The door shut before I finished. That night, I sat on the couch waiting for him to come back, convinced he just needed time. When he didn't, I called Maya. She told me to give him space. I told her space was the last thing he needed. By morning, the gossip had spread. At the clinic, my coworker Tara gave me that polite smile people use when they already know something. At lunch, 2 hygienists whispered, until I stood up and asked if they had something to say. They didn't answer. I messaged Luka and told him to take down the photo. He replied, "Already deleted, didn't think it'd blow up like that." I asked if he could post something to clear it up. He said he didn't want to feed the drama. That's when I realized he'd moved on already, probably telling the same story to someone else, making himself sound like the victim of a crazy married woman. That evening, I went to Nathan's mother's house. She opened the door just enough to talk but didn't invite me in. "He's not ready to see you," she said. "I just need to explain." She cut me off. "Ophelia, everyone in town saw that photo. You've embarrassed him, and you're making it worse by pretending it was nothing." I said, "Because it was nothing." She shook her head slowly. "Then why are you here alone?" I didn't have an answer. When I got home, the house felt hollow. Daniel's toys were scattered on the rug. Nathan's shoes were gone from the hallway. I poured a glass of wine and scrolled through my messages. Most were from people pretending to check in, but really fishing for details. One from Maya just said, "Stop posting. You're making it worse." I looked at my last social post, a smiling photo of me at the bar with the caption, "Still got it." I deleted it, but it didn't matter. The damage was done. Still, I told myself he'd calm down. He always did. He loved me too much to throw everything away over one photo, one misunderstanding. He just needed to remember that. But as I sat there staring at the empty space where his shoes had been, I had the strange feeling that maybe he wasn't coming back this time. And even then, I couldn't bring myself to feel guilty, just annoyed that he'd ruined my moment. The following Monday, I went to work like nothing had happened. That's what I do when things get messy. I act normal until everyone else believes it too. I put on my favorite navy dress, fixed my hair just right, and smiled at every patient who walked through the clinic doors. Pretend long enough and people stop asking questions. But that day, the pretending didn't stick. I could feel it in the way Tara wouldn't meet my eyes when she came to the front desk. The way Dr. Kemp's wife, who usually stops to chat when she drops off lunch, suddenly looked busy. The air felt heavy with quiet judgment. Everyone had seen the photo. I tried to brush it off, telling myself people love gossip but forget fast. Still, by noon, I was shaking. I texted Maya during my break. "People are staring." "Did you tell anyone?" She replied almost instantly. "Ophelia, everyone already knows. Luka's post went everywhere. Someone screenshotted it before he deleted it." I froze. My stomach dropped. So much for pretending it was all harmless. When I got home that evening, Nathan's car still wasn't in the driveway. I walked inside and found the house too clean. His usual mess, the jacket on the chair, the coffee mug by the sink, gone. The silence pressed on me until I started talking out loud just to fill it. "Fine," I said to no one. "Be childish. Run away instead of acting like an adult." But even as I said it, my voice trembled. A couple hours later, my phone buzzed. Maya again. "You should talk to him before he files anything." "Files what?" I typed back. "Just call him, oh, please." I didn't call. I told myself I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. He was the one making a scene, not me. So I opened a bottle of wine, turned on music, and convinced myself I was the calm one. The victim of a controlling husband who couldn't stand seeing his wife admired. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen and saw a plain manila folder sitting on the counter. It hadn't been there the night before. My heart jumped. For a second, I thought Nathan had come home while I slept, but the house was still silent. The folder had one word printed across the front in bold black letters: documented timeline. Inside were sheets of paper, each dated and neatly formatted. Screenshots of texts, timestamps, receipts, details from the past few months. One page was a copy of a message I'd sent Maya weeks ago, complaining about Nathan being too dull for someone my age. Another showed screenshots of the bar post, and a few comments that hinted at more. At the back, a list of contact names: Dr. Kemp, Tara, even Claire, and beside them, notes that read, "Witness awareness." It hit me then. He'd been preparing this, not in anger, not impulsively, methodically, like a man quietly collecting every piece he needed before walking away. I sat at the table and stared at the folder until my eyes blurred. My first instinct was outrage. Who does that? Who gathers evidence against their own wife? Then came the fear. Because if he had gone this far, maybe he wasn't just leaving for a few days. Maybe he was done. I called Maya again, this time with shaking hands. "He's making me look insane," I said. She sighed softly. "Ophelia, he's not making you look anything. You did that yourself." I hung up before she could say more. I told myself she was turning on me because she wanted to keep her distance from the drama. Everyone was. Even Tara had stopped answering my messages. My family hadn't said much, but my mother's single text, "Have you thought about what this is doing to Daniel?" was enough to twist a knife in my chest. Daniel. He hadn't asked many questions yet, but he was quiet lately, keeping to his room. When I tried to hug him, he stiffened. I told myself it was just confusion, that Nathan had probably filled his head with nonsense. By midweek, I couldn't take the silence anymore. I drove to the school, planning to catch Nathan between classes. His car was parked in the staff lot, just like always. I waited near the doors, rehearsing what I'd say, that I was sorry if he felt humiliated, that people were exaggerating, that it was all a misunderstanding. But when he finally appeared, walking toward me with a folder in one hand, something about him stopped me. He didn't look broken or angry. He looked composed, like a man who'd finally made peace with something. He stopped a few feet away. "You shouldn't be here," he said evenly. "I just want to talk," I replied, forcing a smile. "I've said everything I need to in writing," he said. His tone was polite, detached. I hated it. "What writing?" I asked. He gave a small nod toward the folder he carried. "You'll find out soon enough." I tried to sound calm. "Nathan, this is ridiculous. People are twisting everything. It was one photo." He looked at me for a long moment, then said quietly, "You lied to me, Ophelia. You lied to our friends. You lied to our son. And now you're lying to yourself." "I didn't do anything," I snapped. "You're making it sound worse than it was." He exhaled slowly. "That's exactly what I thought you'd say." Then he turned and walked away. I stood there frozen, humiliated, watching him disappear through the staff doors. That night, I poured another glass of wine and tried to convince myself I was fine, that he'd come around once he realized how dramatic he was being. But even as I said it out loud, I could feel something cracking inside me. I tried calling Luka again. No answer. He'd stopped responding altogether. I checked his social media. His band had a new post, a video clip of him rehearsing, captioned, "Some people just crave the spotlight." The comments were full of local gossip. I wanted to scream. Later, there was a knock on the door. I rushed to open it, hoping it was Nathan. Instead, it was Claire. She stood there in a long coat, face calm but cold. "Can I come in?" she asked. I hesitated, then stepped aside. She looked around the spotless living room, then at me. "I came to collect a few of Nathan's things." "He can come himself," I said. "He doesn't want to see you right now." I crossed my arms. "This is absurd. We're married, not enemies." She gave a faint smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Then maybe you should have treated him like a husband, not a stepping stone." Her words stung more than I wanted to admit. "You've always hated me," I said. "No," she said simply. "I wanted to believe he made the right choice. I just don't anymore." She picked up a stack of mail from the counter and paused when she saw the folder. "He asked me to leave that for you," she said. "Everything inside is the truth you've been avoiding." I laughed bitterly. "The truth according to Nathan, you mean?" She looked at me one last time, her expression unreadable. "No, Ophelia. The truth according to everyone but you." When she left, I sank to the floor, shaking. The house felt colder than ever. I stared at the folder again, the neat black letters across the front. I wanted to burn it, tear it up, pretend none of it existed. Instead, I slid it into the drawer beside the fridge, telling myself I'd deal with it later. But I couldn't stop hearing her words. That night, I barely slept. Every sound in the house seemed louder, every shadow sharper. Around midnight, I thought I heard the front door creak and whispered his name, half hoping, half dreading. No one answered. In the morning, Daniel asked when Dad was coming home. I told him soon. He didn't believe me. And as I watched him walk to the school bus, I realized for the first time that maybe I didn't believe myself either. The official letter came on a Thursday afternoon, slipped under the door while I was in the shower. When I opened it, my hands were still damp and the ink smudged a little. Notice of representation, the kind of phrase that sounds harmless until you realize it means someone has hired a lawyer. Against you. The same law firm's name from the first envelope stared up at me again, only this time the tone was colder, heavier. Nathan wasn't just upset anymore. He was organized. I sat on the couch and read every word twice. They wanted financial disclosures, statements about property, notes about custody. Custody. The word made my stomach twist. Daniel was at my mother's that week because she said I needed space to get my head straight. I'd told her I was fine. I wasn't. I called Maya right away, my voice shaking. "He's really doing this," I said. "He's actually getting lawyers involved." She sighed. "Oh, he warned you?" "He didn't warn me, he abandoned me," I snapped. "I didn't even cheat. Not really." "You kissed another man in public and lied about it," she said softly. "What did you expect?" Her calm tone made me furious. "You were there, Maya. You saw it was nothing. Why are you taking his side?" "I'm not taking anyone's side," she said, "but maybe you should talk to your own lawyer before this gets worse." That sentence echoed in my head for hours. Before this gets worse. Like it wasn't already a disaster. The next day, I found myself standing outside a legal office downtown. The receptionist asked if I had an appointment. I didn't, but she fit me in anyway. The lawyer was a woman named Mrs. Parson, mid-40s, calm and sharp-eyed. She asked why I was there, and I told her everything, at least the parts that made me look reasonable. I said Nathan had overreacted, that people in town were gossiping, that I was being punished for something I didn't even do. She listened without interrupting, scribbling notes. When I finished, she asked one question. "Did you spend the night with Mr. Hayes?" I hesitated just long enough for her to notice. "Not like that," I said finally. "I went home right after. It was just a misunderstanding." She nodded once. "All right, but your husband seems to be treating it as adultery." I felt my face heat up. "That's ridiculous. I didn't do anything worth destroying a marriage over." Mrs. Parsons' voice stayed calm. "Maybe not in your eyes, but perception is a powerful thing in family court." I didn't like the way she said family court, like it was inevitable. I asked what my options were. She said I could respond formally to his petition, maybe request mediation, maybe contest certain claims. "If your goal is reconciliation, though," she added, "you might want to avoid escalating." "Reconciliation," I repeated, bitter. "He's already turned this into a performance. Everyone's talking about it. He's using the law to humiliate me." She folded her hands. "Mrs. Dorne, protecting his reputation isn't the same as humiliating you." I left the office feeling cornered, but more determined than ever to take control of the story. That night, I recorded a voice message for Nathan. I told him I'd seen a lawyer too, that this whole thing was childish, that we could still fix it if he stopped acting like a victim. I said Daniel needed both parents, that people were judging me unfairly, that I didn't deserve this. I didn't apologize, not once. He never replied. 2 days later, a courier arrived with another delivery, a small padded envelope, no return address. Inside was a USB drive and a folded note in Nathan's handwriting. "You should probably hear yourself before you tell more lies." I stared at it for a long time before plugging it into my laptop. There were 3 audio files. The first one was my voice. I was at the clinic break room laughing. I didn't remember it being recorded, but the sound was clear. I was saying, I swear, if Nathan could see me with Luka, he'd realize what he's missing. Maybe then he'd stop acting like I'm lucky to have him. My stomach turned. The second clip was from Maya's party, me bragging after Luka bought me a drink. It's not cheating if you don't do it twice, right? The third was from the week after, at lunch with co-workers. "He's boring," I'd said, laughing. "Sometimes I just want to feel like I could have someone better, even if I don't take it." I shut the laptop so fast the lid snapped. My hands were shaking. I wanted to blame someone else, Maya, the clinic, anyone, but I knew the voice was mine. He'd been recording me, or someone had. The idea made me sick, but underneath the anger was something worse. Fear. He had proof that I'd been lying, proof that I'd mocked him, proof that I'd wanted attention more than honesty. I texted him immediately. "You've gone too far. This is illegal. I can report you." He replied 5 minutes later. Everything was obtained legally. Public spaces, shared devices. You gave consent when you used the joint phone plan. That single message made my knees go weak. He'd thought of everything. The next morning, I called Mrs. Parson again, trying to sound composed. "He's spying on me," I said. "He recorded me without permission." "Did the recordings occur in private spaces?" she asked. I hesitated. "Not exactly." She sighed. "Then he's within his rights, unfortunately." I felt something inside me snap. "He's trying to destroy me." Her tone softened slightly. "Or he's protecting himself. From what you've told me, he's doing everything by the book." I hung up before I started crying. For the next few days, I lived in a blur of anger and denial. I tried to reach Luka again. No response. I left him a long voicemail, begging him to say nothing happened between us if Nathan's lawyer contacted him. He never called back. A few hours later, his band's social page posted a photo of him with another woman, captioned, "New Muse, New Music." I threw my phone across the room. By the time Monday came, I couldn't stand the quiet anymore. I drove to Claire's house, even though I knew she'd probably slam the door in my face. She opened it halfway, eyes narrowing when she saw me. "I need to talk to him," I said. She shook her head. "He's not here." "Then tell him to call me. Please, I need to explain." She hesitated, then said, "He doesn't want an explanation, Ophelia. He wants closure." I laughed bitterly. "Closure? From what? I didn't ruin anything." Claire's face stayed calm, almost pitying. "You already did. You just don't know it yet." I drove home shaking, too angry to cry. When I walked inside, the house felt smaller somehow, like the walls had moved closer. I went to the drawer where I'd hidden the folder and pulled it out. I flipped through the pages, the evidence, the calm handwriting. It all made me feel like a criminal in my own life. There was one page I hadn't noticed before, stapled to the back of the last section. It was a financial summary, joint accounts, property values, and at the bottom, a single line highlighted in yellow. Preliminary custody assessment. Father recommended as primary caregiver. That was the moment it hit me. He wasn't bluffing. I sat down hard on the floor, holding the page like it might change if I stared long enough. I thought about Daniel's face, the way he'd stopped asking when his dad was coming home. For the first time, I felt something close to guilt, not the loud, angry kind I usually turned into excuses, but a quiet, sinking guilt that didn't leave any room for pride. Still, I couldn't bring myself to say I was wrong. Not yet. Instead, I whispered to the empty house, "He's not going to win. I won't let him." But the words sounded weak, even to me. Outside, I heard the faint hum of a car pulling away. I rushed to the window, half hoping it was Nathan. It wasn't. It was a courier van, probably another envelope. I watched it disappear down the street, my reflection trembling in the glass, and for the first time, I realized I didn't look angry anymore. I looked scared. The courthouse smelled like old paper and coffee. I never thought I'd end up there, at least not for something like this. I'd imagined courtrooms from TV, drama, shouting, tears, but this one was silent, almost polite. The clerk spoke softly, the clock ticked too loud, and Nathan sat across the room in a navy suit like a stranger I used to know. He didn't look at me once, not when I walked in, not when I sat down, not when the judge read out our names. I wanted to believe it was because he still cared, that if he looked at me, he might remember what we had. But the truth hit harder. He didn't need to remember anymore. He'd already rewritten the story. When my name was called, my throat went dry. My lawyer, Mrs. Parson, gave me a small nod. "Just stay calm," she whispered. "He's sticking strictly to procedure." Procedure. That word had haunted me for weeks. Every letter, every form, every recorded sentence had felt like another nail sealing the box around my life. The judge asked simple questions, dates, documents, acknowledgement of evidence. I nodded when I was supposed to, spoke when asked. Nathan's lawyer, some young man with a crisp voice, read a summary of incidents contributing to loss of marital trust. He listed everything, the photo, the public comments, the recordings, the messages I'd sent Luka. Each item sounded smaller when I'd done it, but huge now, like stepping stones leading straight to this moment. When the lawyer mentioned Daniel, my heart skipped. The petitioner requests primary custody on the grounds of stable environment and consistent emotional presence. Mrs. Parson objected softly, asked for shared custody, said I was a loving mother going through temporary stress, but even her words sounded tired. The judge glanced at me, expression unreadable. "Mrs. Dorne, do you wish to make a statement?" For a moment, I thought about apologizing, about saying I never meant for any of this to happen, that I just wanted attention, that I was lonely. But the words felt too small. Instead, I said, "This has all been blown out of proportion. I was loyal for years. I made one mistake, and now everyone acts like I'm the villain. The judge nodded once, writing something down. Acknowledged. That was it. No reaction, no sympathy. Just acknowledgement, like I was another case in a stack of many. When it was Nathan's turn, he stood and spoke quietly. I don't want to destroy her, he said. I just need to protect myself and my son. I've documented everything truthfully. I'm not seeking revenge. I'm seeking peace. Those words, so calm, so deliberate, cut deeper than any insult. Revenge would have been easier to hate. But peace sounded final. The session ended in under an hour. Papers were signed, hands shaken. Mrs. Parson told me we'd get official copies soon. Nathan didn't even look back when he left. I walked out of the courthouse into the bright afternoon light, blinking hard. The world looked too normal. Cars passed, people laughed, someone fed pigeons on the steps. It felt wrong, like everything inside me had collapsed, but the world hadn't noticed. At home, the silence waited. I dropped my purse on the floor and just stood there. The folder still sat on the kitchen counter, where I'd left it weeks ago. Next to it was another envelope, thinner this time. I opened it slowly, afraid of what new formality waited inside. It was the final agreement, division of property, custody schedule, financial notes. At the bottom, Nathan's neat signature again. Underneath it, a short note handwritten in the margin. You don't have to lie anymore. You can just live your truth. I wanted to tear it apart, but my hands wouldn't move. I sat down instead, reading the words over and over. Live your truth. As if he thought I even knew what that was. A knock came at the door that evening. When I opened it, Claire was there, holding Daniel's overnight bag. He stood beside her, small and serious. I'll bring him back tomorrow, she said quietly. Nathan thought it might help if you spent some time together before the schedule begins. I forced a smile. Thank you. Daniel walked past me, clutching his stuffed fox. He didn't say much that night. We ate dinner in silence, him pushing peas around his plate, me pretending to check emails. When I tucked him into bed, he looked up at me and asked, "Are you mad at Dad?" I froze. Of course not, honey. Why would I be? He shrugged. He said you just wanted to be happy. My throat tightened. He said that? Daniel nodded sleepily. He said sometimes grown-ups hurt people when they forget they're already loved. He fell asleep before I could answer. I sat there in the dark room for a long time, listening to his breathing. Maybe Nathan had told him that so Daniel wouldn't hate me. Or maybe it was true, and I'd never realized it until it was too late. The next morning, Claire came to pick him up. I packed his things slowly, folding each shirt like it mattered. When they left, Daniel waved from the car window, and I smiled until they turned the corner. Then I closed the door and let myself sink to the floor. The house was too quiet again. I opened the fridge just to hear a sound. Inside was a half-empty bottle of white wine, still from the night everything started. I thought about drinking it, but the sight of it made me sick. Instead, I went to the living room and scrolled through my phone. The messages were old now. Friends who'd stopped checking in, co-workers who'd unfollowed me, even Maya, who'd finally gone silent after her last text. You should take some time off social media. You're just feeding the story. I deleted every app. Watching the icons vanish gave me a strange sense of control. For the first time in weeks, there was no noise. As the afternoon light dimmed, I caught my reflection in the window. Same face, same makeup, but different eyes. Not softer, not wiser, just tired. I thought about how it all started. One night, one joke, one need to feel wanted. And somehow, that had led here, to this silence, this emptiness wrapped in official paperwork. Maybe Nathan had been boring. Maybe I'd felt unseen. But he'd loved me. He'd trusted me. And I'd turned that trust into a weapon, thinking it would make me powerful. Instead, it made me small. When the doorbell rang again, my heart jumped. I thought maybe he'd come back, maybe to talk, maybe to forgive. but it was a courier again, holding a plain envelope. "Final delivery from the court," he said. I signed for it with a hand that barely worked. Inside was a single stamped document confirming the case closure. Marital dissolution granted. Custody finalized. The words blurred, then steadied again. At the bottom, a final note from the clerk. Case closed as of 4:32 p.m. That was it. No drama, no argument, no last plea. Just time, recorded neatly on paper. I set the document on the table beside the others. My life reduced to pages, dates, signatures, facts. For a moment, I thought about calling Nathan, to tell him he'd won, or maybe to ask if he felt free now. But I didn't. I knew he wouldn't answer. Instead, I whispered the words to myself, as if saying them might make them true. I didn't do anything wrong. But the silence that followed didn't believe me. Outside, the streetlights flickered on, one by one. I watched them through the window until the world went dark, and for the first time, I understood what he meant when he said he wanted peace. It wasn't about revenge. It was about finally stepping out of the noise I'd created and leaving me behind in it.